Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing today? Good morning. My name is Peter Bolland, and welcome again to Friday Reflections, our weekly Friday morning get together here in the contemplative wing of San Diego Oasis, where we gather together to reflect on our week and explore together the ways in which insights from the world's wisdom traditions and the world's diverse wisdom teachers intersect in the busy traffic of our own lives. And, we could do this program for a million years and never run out of material, because there is always every morning a fresh set of adventures and experiences to traverse. And in that traversing, one is constantly reminded of things that one has read, or films that one has seen, or music that one has heard, or experiences from the rich treasure troves of our own memories that we can touch back on. So I really cherish our time together, and I just want to thank each and every single one of you with deep gratitude for your willingness to come into this gathering, to gather together in this virtual space every Friday. It's been such a wonderful gift that you've given me, this opportunity to be here with you consciously for this period of time. I just think about it all week long. Things cross my mind. I think, oh, I should do that on Friday, or oh, I should do that on Friday. And people even send me stuff, hey, you should talk about this, or you should talk about that. So it all goes on the list, and who knows what is moving through the cave of the heart, and what warm and chilly winds are blowing that carry these distant messages to us from all these beautiful sources. Quick look at our calendar before we gently slide into the pool of this morning's thoughts. I've got a big March coming up here. Here we are at the beginning of March, and we're here every Friday. I don't have to tell you that, but I have 2 webinars coming up this month as well. And the first one is on this coming Tuesday, just in a few days, on the other side of this weekend. On Tuesday, we're gathering on Tuesday morning from 10 to 11:30 for a 90-minute webinar on Don Miguel Ruiz's really immortal classic now. I mean, it's been an enormous publishing success, and a really powerful set of teachings called the Four Agreements. Even if you've been through this webinar with me before, it might be time for a refresher. It's been it's been a long time since we did it, and I'm looking forward to it again. I was looking over my notes the other day, and boy, the Four Agreements have never been more relevant and potent and transformative than they are right now. So consider joining me for that, especially if you don't know what I'm talking about. You don't have to have read the book. I'm going to teach you in this hour-long, 60-minute presentation the core ideas of Don Miguel Ruiz's very short little book called The Four Agreements. And then the final 30 minutes we'll do, of course, as we always do in our webinars, a Q&A, a discussion, a chance for you and I to really explore the practical application of these ideas and how it might all actually work. It's often my favorite part. So we're talking about indigenous American teachings that he discerned from his immersion as a shaman's apprentice in the Toltec tradition. So this is just, I just love this stuff. It's it's my thing. It's right up my alley. I love all wisdom traditions, but there's something about indigenous American stuff that really calls me and pulls me and haunts me. And it's very, very, very compelling. So see you on Tuesday for that. And then 2 Tuesdays after that, toward the end of the month, the 23rd of March, brand new webinar. And the registration for that one has been very strong already. So we're looking at a nice big group of folks. And please, if you haven't registered, consider joining us for for the American Buddha, the wisdom of Walt Whitman. So I decided to call it American Buddha because I think Walt Whitman is kind of our American Buddha. I mean, it's hyperbolic to put it that way, I suppose. He's not exactly a Buddha, but you know what I mean. He's this amazing poet, of course, and I think wisdom teacher. There's something about, I'm a sucker for poetry, right? You all know that if you're here with me. I got my Fred Lamont poem all lined up for today. And I always do a poem here at Friday Reflections. And I love how poets have a way of speaking the unspeakable. And Walt Whitman broke every rule and created a uniquely American vocabulary in poetry, while at the same time tapping into really ancient perennial truth. And there's something very Vedantic and Buddhist and non-dualistic about his spiritual teachings, but he doesn't use any of that vocabulary. So join me for an exploration of a number of, we're going to read together a lot of passages from, particularly I'm going to focus on Leaves of Grass, and particularly that first poem, Song of Myself. I'm not going to read it all. It's like a 40-page poem, but we're going to pull pieces of it out and see what we find. So join me for American Buddha, the wisdom of Walt Whitman here at San Diego Oasis on Tuesday, March 23rd, also 10 to 11:30. All right. Get all the commercials out of the way here. I just want y'all to know about those in case you haven't stumbled on that in your perusal of the Oasis catalog. Beautiful day today. Have you been outside yet? Lori and I always walk around 6 a.m. We go down before we start work, we go down to the lake, and I live near Lake Murray here in San Carlos, La Mesa area. And we walk down and just enjoy whatever's happening and get some movement and get out under the sky and breathe all that beautiful, fresh night air as it's turning into day. It's really powerful. I want to think about that a little bit with you today. And I also want to, let's talk about owls again. Third week in a row, I think I've mentioned owls, and I got my, bird shirt on today, and there's some ravens. A lot of you've asked me about this painting. This is a painting by an old high school friend of mine, actually, named Douglas Schneider. So Google that, Douglas Schneider, Schneider, if you want to see him. He's up in the Bay Area, and long story, but he calls himself an abstract realist. And I just love his work. It just every single one of his paintings throws me right into a dream. And Lori and I are honored to have one of his works here in our home. But anyway, yeah, I got a raven on my shoulder, I guess is my point. But I'm thinking about owls because last night, again, as I was laying in bed, I heard the great horned owls in the trees. And this time they were farther away. I could barely hear them. And one way over here and one way over there. And one of them says, "Who, who." And then I check my watch and I wait. And about 10 seconds later, from the other side of the trees, around the lake, around the golf course, comes the call, the answer. Who. And then another 10, 15 seconds, the other one, back and forth. And I had this strange thought that it's like, what are they saying? And I'm not suggesting owls are speaking in words like we do, but there's this sense in which the call that they give out, this is how it felt to me when I heard that call. It sounded to me like, here I am. And at the same time, it sounded to me like, where are you? And it's, I guess in the scientific term, we would call it echolocation. That's how bats do things, right? They send out sounds and then they listen for how those sounds come back. They find insects not with their eyes, but with sonic, they see sound is a crude way to put it. And I wonder if owls, of course, who have remarkable night vision, so they're nothing like bats in that sense, but I wonder if they're just this very recognizable way to us, sort of saying, hey, I'm here, where are you? And the other one says, I'm over here, where are you? And it just felt in my heart like such a beautiful kind of connective moment. And it took me right back to those Bhagavad Gita readings that we did last week, where I took you through 4, 5, or 6 passages from the Gita where Lord Krishna, who is the divine teacher in that ancient Hindu text, the Bhagavad Gita, and who is himself like Jesus in the Christian tradition. Krishna is the embodiment, the incarnation of Lord Vishnu, and Vishnu himself is the personification of Brahman, the boundless ground of being that is everywhere and that is everything. So Krishna stands before Arjuna really as, in a simple Western word, God. And Krishna reminds Arjuna over and over again, I am in, and now I'm not quoting now, I'm just going to make up my own Bhagavad Gita passages. Krishna says to Arjuna, I am in the unfurling of the leaf. I am in the wind beneath the wing of a bird. I am in the red of the rose. I am in the song of the flute. The other day we were walking around Lake Murray and there was someone all the way across the lake by the docks. I'm going to guess that they were of Native American origin because they were singing and playing in Native American style. They were pounding a drum. Boom, 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 boom. And then there was a female voice singing in an indigenous tongue all the way across the lake as the pre-dawn darkness turned to dawn. And I thought, what a beautiful gift they were giving to the world. It was holy, and it felt exactly like the moment when I walked into Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, and there was a mixed men's and boys choir singing Samuel Barber's Adagio for strings. They were doing a vocal arrangement of that. It was that exact same chills, exact same thinness. It's like the thin space where suddenly the divine became present. And that Native American song was profoundly haunting. And Krishna's passages from last week, and I'm really jumping between traditions and experiences here, but for me, the through line, the thread is that all of those statements of Krishna saying, I am in every creature, I am in your own thoughts, I am your longings, I am your enjoyment, I am in your suffering. There's this sense in which all is one. And we've heard that little three-word phrase so many times, it's become completely banal and cliche. But to sit with it, as we do when we study the Bhagavad Gita, what does it really mean if everything is connected, if everything is one? And I think about that call between those two owls, that longing to be known, here I am, and that longing to know, where are you? Between two different embodied forms of the same oneness, these two magnificent owls. And it reminds me of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. Many of you have studied Joseph Campbell's hero journey with me or by yourself or with others, and you've read the text or you've seen my hero's journey videos on my YouTube channel. There's 17 stages in the classic hero's journey. The 3 big stages are, the departure, the initiation, and the return. But within those 3 main phases of the monomyth cycle are 17 substages. And the first stage, I bet a lot of you could tell me what it is. It is the call to adventure, where our would-be hero is brought out of their ordinary, domestic, kind of unconscious, programmed, cultured life, a life they didn't really choose or create, the life that just sort of grew up around them. And it's a perfectly wonderful life, right? But in the hero's story, our hero is sort of pulled out of that. And it takes many, many forms, right? It's in the classic in the classic stories, like in the Bible, it is the call comes from God. God appears to Moses as a burning bush and gives him his marching orders. I need you to go down to Egypt and confront the Pharaoh and liberate my people and all that stuff. Or Jonah, that story of Jonah in the Bible where God says, I need you to go to this village and preach the word. And God says, and Jonah says, I'm going to go the other way. And then he gets on a boat and there's a storm and he ends up in the belly of the fish and the fish spits him out on the beach of exactly the same town he was trying to avoid going to. So that idea of the call is how all heroes' journey begins, how all heroes' journeys begin. And I invite you to wonder. I invite you to wonder. I guess that's what this whole series of Friday Reflections is about. Every Friday I get up here and I invite you to wonder. But this morning I invite you to wonder, what have you been called to? What have you been called to do? What have you been called to be? And who is doing the calling? Who or what is doing the calling? For most of us, it isn't going to be a burning bush or literally the voice of God. That's sort of the, I would say, ham-fisted way that it's handled in those stories. Isn't it true that in many of the heroes' journeys, the call comes from within? It can be as simple as a dissatisfaction with where you are. You don't, you just get this sense at certain times in your life where it's like, this isn't it. I'm restless. I'm dissatisfied. I'm longing to grow. I want to, that phrase, branch out. I want to grow new branches. There's something in me whose inherent nature it is to expand. And all these systems and social obligations and duties and everything are kind of, it's like a house plant that's in too small of a pot. It's root bound and we're branch bound. We can't grow. And there comes a time in your life where you're like, I got to get out of here. It's like, I don't know where I'm going, but I can't stay here. That too is a form of the call. And for many of these stories, it often involves, going out in the wilderness. Buddha goes into the forest and he throws off his whole life of luxury and power and pleasure. And he's like, this is not doing it. And he goes out in the forest and he meditates and he learns from all the gurus he can find. And after a 6-year period, becomes the Buddha, becomes enlightened. And in the Gospels, we hear the story of Jesus, who goes to meet John the Baptist in the wilderness, along the Jordan River. And this is an uncomfortable story in Christianity, that Jesus, who in classic sort of Christian orthodoxy is God and was born divine, why does he need baptism? Have you ever wondered about that? It's an interesting question, isn't it? Why does Jesus need to be baptized? I thought he was God. And yet, when John the Baptist, who's this kind of weird dude who lives in the desert and eats locusts and lives on locusts and honey, and he's preaching about repentance and you've got to get clean. You got to get clean of your sin. And people are flocking to him, sinners, the kind of people you see in a courthouse going into their trials, wife beaters, drunks, people who drove drunk, people who stole money from the company, people who are violent, people who got caught in horrible compulsive disorders, us. And Jesus gets in line with those guys. His humanness needed some cleansing. And so that often happens in the desert. You know the story from the Gospels. After Jesus is baptized, he goes into the wilderness and he fasts for 40 days and 40 nights. And so in theistic religions, in Judaism and Christianity and in Islam, and in the theistic lanes of Hinduism and Buddhism, where they talk a lot about deities, in theistic religions, it is God who calls us, and it is God who we long for. That's the here I am and where are you energy, that feeling of incompletion in us, that feeling of dissatisfaction, that feeling of restlessness, that feeling of longing is in the theistic religions often described as God calling us to him. By the way, when Moses is standing before the burning bush, right? And the burning bush is telling him, God is telling Moses, you need to go to Egypt and do this impossible task. And Moses says, who shall I say sent me? What is your name? And God gives his name in the Bible for the first time, Yahweh, which is translated in English as I am who am. So I think about that, my owl friends again, that who, here I am. It's an announcement. That's exactly what God said to Moses. Here I am. I am who am. I am being. I am that which exists. And that announcement, is that what's budding up inside of us? In traditional theistic language, God is over here calling us to go find him. There's some sort of a journey, a pilgrimage narrative in play. But the mystics of those same traditions, the mystics, of course, describe it not as going from here over to there. In the mystical voices of those same theistic traditions, the Christian, the Jewish, the Islamic mystics, not to mention numerous Hindu and Buddhist voices, they're going to take us to a deeper realization. They're going to help us understand that the God word, that God is a word for the nameless sacred presence within us. What Krishna was talking about last week when I was talking about the Bhagavad Gita and My Octopus Teacher, that amazing film, that I think that man was communing with an octopus, but he was really discovering the divinity within himself. That's what brings the tears, as you finally wake up to the depth of your own infinite mystery and significance in the encounter with the other. So the two become one in the meeting. This is the mystery, of course, in Christianity of the Holy Trinity, of the three in one, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit as aspects of one thing. So the God word in mysticism is simply the name of the sacred presence within us. God is the ground on which we stand. And here's the final kicker, right? Our longing for God in the mystical language is God's longing for himself or itself or herself. Those words, it absolutely doesn't matter. That stops me in my tracks to think about that. My restlessness is God's restlessness. It's a fascinating way to frame it. And it sort of ennobles your life. And now you realize that your dissatisfaction is not petty at all. That it's a profound soul message that you ignore at your own peril. Well, this is the great mystical realization. Here I am. Where are you? And the call and the answer are coming from the same place. I'm thinking about Ralph Waldo Emerson and his remarkable body of work. I'm a huge fan. Many of you have read him and studied him with me or with others. I want to read you a passage, the most famous mystical passage in American literature, from his first book, his book called Nature in 1836. And it's about his mystical experience. And I hope what I've been sharing with you this morning kind of sets this piece up. Because this is Emerson walking, as Lori and I were walking this morning, across an almost frozen field. It was pretty chilly today. This is Emerson walking across a frozen field at twilight. He says, crossing a bare common in snow puddles at twilight, under a clouded sky, without having in my thoughts any occurrence of special good fortune, I have enjoyed a perfect exhilaration. I am glad to the brink of fear. In the woods, too, a man casts off his years as a snake his slough, and at what period soever of life is always a child. That timelessness, yeah? In the woods is perpetual youth, Emerson writes. Within these plantations of God, a decorum and sanctity reign. A perennial festival is dressed, and the guest sees not how he should tire of them in 1,000 years. In the woods, we return to reason and faith. There, I feel that nothing can befall me in life, no disgrace, no calamity, leaving me my eyes, which nature cannot repair. Now, here we go. Standing on the bare ground, my head bathed in the blithe air and uplifted into infinite space, all mean egotism vanishes. I become a transparent eyeball. I am nothing. I see all. The currents of the universal being circulate through me. I am part or parcel of God. The name of the nearest friend sounds then foreign and accidental. To be brothers, to be acquaintances, master or servant is then a trifle and a disturbance. I am the lover of uncontained and immortal beauty. In the wilderness, I find something more dear and connate than in streets or villages. In the tranquil landscape, and especially in the distant line of the horizon, a man beholds somewhat as beautiful as his own nature. This is Emerson's mystical realization of oneness, that in that moment, an exhilaration, a gladness, the Sanskrit word is ananda, bliss, comes up. And then one's ego disappears, and there is no longer me having the experience. There's just the experience. That's oneness. And it's sublimely pleasant because it is finally freedom from the prison of my own fear and endless repetition of disaster narratives and thoughts. And suddenly, the distinction between God and whatever this is becomes meaningless. So I want to share with you a poem also today from one of my favorite poets who I've shared some work from before, Fred Lamotte, Lamotte, Fred Lamotte. He's kind of like me. He's about my age. He lives up in the Pacific Northwest outside of Seattle, and he's an adjunct professor of religious studies. One difference we have is that he's a really well regarded and well published and well read and wonderful poet. So let me read to you a poem by Fred Lamotte called One Who Loved You. Sorry, it's called One Who Loved You. The one who loved you madly into being has become your breath. If you empty your chest, she fills your darkness with moonlight. Your first duty is inhalation. Your last is merely to breathe out. This is how you polish the earth like a sparkling emerald. What you do between birth and death is not so important. Just hug the whole entanglement without untying any knots. Through your magisterial refusal, a laughing hellebore tiered with dewdrops answers every question. A dandelion embodies the maker of all things. Self-awareness is the pulse of a twin-chambered heart. The one who sees is the one who is seen. Yet between them is a distance so vast it contains the night, and so alive it churns out stars. Matter is a mist in your eye, but the soul is solid as a diamond. Already are you the boundless space into whom you ever expand. This is the paradox deep in the green of your iris, defining Ananda, the bliss of bewilderment. All you need is the hunger of silence to understand that the cry of an owl at midnight is sacred and means precisely nothing. Yet in this nothing, your ancestors gather, singing your name by the glow of a golden fire that was never lit. At dawn, you'll see the truth. All through the darkest hours, some wordless, mothering, secret force was weaving galaxies into the shape of a nest. She is the one who sings the whole sky in a robin's egg. Fred Lamott, one who loved me. My honor and pleasure always to share these Friday morning reveries with you. They feel a lot to me like a prayer, and I come away with some of the dust rubbed off the lamp. And I hope some of you share that experience with me, and that you bring the one light into every room you walk into today and out underneath this big, beautiful blue March sky. See you on the other side.